Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about all the ways that you can get a two-shot kill in the Crucible. You can achieve this using a variety of methods, including subclasses, armor mods, and weapon perks. To me, landing that perfect two-shot is one of the most satisfying moments you can hunt for in PvP, so what I'm going to do today is create a tier list of all the ways that you can. I'm sure your guys' list will look a little different, and your rankings will be different, but that's okay. I'm coming from a hunter main perspective, and the rest of you no doubt have some different experiences. What I'm going to try to do is share some somewhat objective assessments of some 2-tap builds out there, give you guys my thoughts based on a couple of criteria. First, how effective is this build? Does the damage buff last long enough to even matter? Can you secure a kill with it fast enough? Second, how consistent is this build? Can you proc it easily? Does it require lots of kill chaining, or is it fairly simple to get the buff consistently? So for example, an S-tier 2-shot build might look like something that's easy to proc, long enough buff to grab some 2-shots without having to go ape and get killed over. For a D-tier build, it's going to look like something that's tough to proc and doesn't even last long enough to really matter. Sometimes it might save your life with a rare 2-tap, but most times it's going to run out before you can even use it. Before we launch into the rankings though, I would just like to say thanks to all of you who have subscribed recently. I really appreciate your support, it means a lot. For those of you who aren't subscribed yet, I would be thrilled if you considered. I try to post Destiny content once a week, and you'll find interesting videos like this one, or others where I'm reviewing weapons or showcasing some challenging content. If you enjoy the content, subscribe and don't forget to like and comment. It all goes a long way and I really do appreciate it. With that said, let's launch right into the rankings. Oh, and actually one last thing before I continue. For these builds, I was using Igneous Hammer. Igneous Hammer is a fantastic, reliable 120 RPM hand cannon and is a reward you can get from trials most weeks. To be quite honest, the only reason I have a decent roll is because it was from the 3-win reward last week. So, when it comes to using these builds, you're going to want to use something like a 120 RPM hand cannon, high-impact pulse rifles, or something like Dead Man's Tale. High-impact pulse rifles already sport a 2-burst kill, however, getting the damage buff from any one of these builds makes grabbing that 2-burst kill incredibly easy, and I feel like it's worth noting. I could be totally wrong, but I believe these are the main archetypes that can pull off 2-shot kills. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Igneous Hammer is my test subject in nearly all the footage you'll see below. We're going to start with some subclasses first, and perhaps with the most obvious choice, Whisper of Hedrons from the Stasis subclass. Whisper of Hedrons states that upon freezing a target with stasis, you gain a damage buff. Turns out this buff is extra 20% damage for 10 seconds. Right off the bat, we're starting with a strong one, and I'm going to put this one in the S tier. Whisper of Hedrons is both effective and consistent. 10 seconds is one of the longest buff timers aside from some supers in the Crucible, so for the entirety of that 10 seconds, you can run around and 2-tap people with Igneous Hammer or similar weapons at ranges of up to 35 or 40 meters. It's a very strong buff, and I can't say enough about it. Now, in order to get the most out of this build, I would recommend figuring out how you can freeze enemies the easiest and then build towards that. So for me, that looks like using the Cold Snap grenade and maxing out my discipline. Duskfield got nerfed and doesn't freeze super well. I'm not great with placing Glacier grenades, so my pick is the Cold Snap grenade. In order to keep this buff up as much as you can, I'd run something like Frosties with your Hunter to get your abilities back faster while you sprint, which you're sprinting a lot in the Crucible, along with the Bomber class item perk. Do that and you'll be 2-tapping people quite a bit. Again, very easy to proc, very easy to use once you have it. It's just an all-around excellent buff. Next on the list, we have Sunspots for Bottom Tree Sunbreaker. Sunspots will appear after you get an ability kill and will last for about 20 seconds and grant you a damage buff while standing inside or for 5 seconds after passing through it. I find Sunspots a little bit frustrating to proc sometimes. Landing grenade kills doesn't always happen easily for me, and running in for the melee kill doesn't seem like a great idea when most times there's going to be a Fellrunner's live barrel in your face. However, once you do land an ability kill, this buff becomes very strong. Landing any kind of kill when inside a sunspot will heal you, and your abilities charge faster as well. So once you get them started, they're excellent. I found that I was able to chain these very nicely once I'd used my super the first time and created a few sunspots. For this build, I'd recommend using Heart of Inmost Light, since using any one of your abilities will make the others stronger as well as regenerate faster. Since this build is focused completely on using your abilities to make sunspots, this is a pretty natural choice. The next subclass we'll be looking at is Arc Middle Tree for Titans, more specifically Inertia Override. Inertia Override grants the damage buff anytime you slide over ammunition, as well as reloads the weapon in hand. The buff lasts for 4 seconds and provides a big enough boost to make this list. The nature of this perk pushes you to a whole different level of aggressive in my opinion. Land a kill, run and slide over the ammo, land some 2 shots with those precious few seconds, and restart the cycle. It relies heavily on your willingness to get up close, put yourself in some potentially dangerous situations. I found myself getting killed sometimes because I would secure a kill, then just bum rush the ammo brick and get myself into trouble. So you have to be smart and decide what bricks you'll go for and which ones you won't. For me, I'm going to put this one in the C tier. I imagine some of you will disagree with this, which is understandable if you're a very aggressive player, but I'm not so much. I'm more than happy to put 25, 30 meters in between me and my opponent. I found that while it's easy enough to proc Inertia Override, actually using it was more of a challenge. Many times the buff just ran out before I saw anyone else. Seeing as the buff is only 4 seconds, it was only enough to sometimes get me out of a bad situation that, frankly, I shouldn't have been in the first place. Considering that the weapons you'll have to use for these 2-shot builds are generally longer range, I didn't like that I had to put myself in harm's way and get too close just to activate Inertia Override. Overall, I wouldn't say this perk is bad, it's just more suited for a specialized role. Next, I'd like to talk about Warlocks. Maybe when you saw the title of this video, you thought of it immediately. This isn't really anything new I'm about to tell you, but empowering rifts on any subclass will allow you to get 2-shot kills with weapons like Igneous Hammering. Rifts are simple enough. Just find a spot you think you can work with and plunk it down. Without really having any setup, you have a buff that lets you 2-shot people at long range. Just understand that when you do this, you're limiting your mobility. So place it near cover or a location that lets you escape if people decide to push you. Since the buff doesn't carry with you and you have to stay inside the well, it leaves you rather vulnerable to being flanked or outplayed. The Crucible is all about movement and positioning, so make sure you place your well in a location that's not going to get you burned. If you start getting pushed too hard and the walls are closing in, just bail out of there, it's not worth it. To be honest with you, when I was testing this, I didn't get too many kills, but I think that's probably because I'm just bad at being a warlock. I've spent maybe 5% of my time in the last 7 years I've played Destiny, and I think it probably shows a little. Regardless, I'm going to put Empowering Rift in the A tier. It's not perfect, but it's about as close as it gets for just a class ability. The Rift lasts for about 15 seconds, which is a nice long time. It regenerates quickly if you have maxed recovery, and you can even combine it with other builds like Whisper of Hedrons or Charged with Light, which we'll get into later. I liked using Sanguine Alchemy to extend the Rift duration when I got kills, and another solid exotic choice would be Lunafaction Boots. The increased reload speed would be great on Igneous Hammer, and it even bumps your range, which would really let you lane with hand cannons like these. Next option for Warlocks is the Empowered buff from Middle Tree Dawnblade. Simply hitting an enemy with your melee is enough to grant the buff, and it'll last you 5 seconds. This one seems to me like it would work most frequently if you had to shotgun melee somebody and were playing pretty aggressively. While this could certainly come in handy here and there, I don't think this is something you'll be able to rely on consistently to pull off 2-shot kills. Melee energy can take a while to regenerate if you're not speccing for it, and you'll probably get shotgunned half the time when you try, which can be a frustrating experience. So for those reasons, not very easy to proc and doesn't even last real long when you do, I'm putting this one in the D tier. I'm sure there are other elements that you can combine with this to elevate it a little bit, but right now, it's just not my favorite option. Now that we're done addressing the subclasses, let's talk about the actual weapons themselves. Damage perks are a great way to land some 2-shot kills, but some are easier than others. Rampage stands out the most to me here. It's very easy to proc, doesn't require chain kills like multi-kill clip or a reload, just 1 kill. Rampage times 1 with 120 hand cannons is enough to 2-tap most Guardians. I was somewhat unlucky and haven't gotten a roll of Bottom Dollar or Igneous Hammer with Rampage, so I haven't been able to try this personally. So if you guys have any of either of these guns with those rolls, let me know what you think down in the comments. Just based on what I've heard though, Rampage on Igneous or Bottom Dollar is an S tier perk. Very easy to proc and lasts just long enough to chain some kills without too much trouble. Add Rampage spec onto that and you'll have an even easier time. Finally, for our last 2-tap build, we've got High Energy Fire. For this one, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Getting charged with light in PvP is not very easy, and it doesn't happen a lot unless you spec out for it and give yourself every chance to become charged with light. To become charged with light, I use Taking Charge, Charge Harvester, and then Stacks on Stacks. Taking Charge grants you a charge anytime you pick up an Orb of Power, so you can take advantage of other people using their supers and pick up their orbs to become charged with light. Since you're using Stacks on Stacks, each orb you pick up is going to grant you 2 stacks of charged with light. Your allies generally drop more than just 1 orb too, so I'd recommend having Supercharged equipped, which lets you hold up to 4 charges. And probably my favorite thing about this build is that there's no timer once you have the buff. Once you're charged with light, you have it until you use it, or until you die. You can seriously wreck people once mid-game comes around and people start popping their supers, you pick up their orbs, get charged with light, and start two-shotting everybody. Even orbs for masterworked weapons will count and charge you up. So if you get a multi-kill with a masterworked weapon, definitely check the feed and see if you dropped an orb and go pick it up. Fortunately, you don't have to wait until mid-game either to use high energy fire. This is why I use Charge Harvester, which gives you an increasing chance to become charged as you get kills. Sometimes it takes 3 or more kills, but if you can make some plays consistently, it's kind of like a nice bonus. All the details aside, what might be the best reason to use this build is because it can be used with any of the others I mentioned above. Whether you want to use Whisper of Hedrons or focus on going full sweat with Inertia Override, you can use those subclasses in combination with higher energy fire. With as much as this build has going for it, I think it belongs in the S tier. So for a little bit of recap, I've got Whisper of Hedrons, Rampage, and higher energy fire in S tier, Sunspots and Empowering Rifts in A tier, Nothing in B tier, Inertia Override in tier C, and lastly Warlock Empowering Melee in tier D. So there you have it. I'm guessing you guys will all have different opinions on this, but that's my list as of Season of the Chosen. There's no saying Bungie won't make some updates in the future, and that by that time you watch this, half this video is irrelevant. But for now, this is what we've got. I have a feeling I missed some 2-tap combos in here somewhere, so if I did, feel free to let me know in the comments. So yeah, thanks for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you found this interesting and helpful. If you did, hit that notification bell so you know when I release another video. Until then, hope you have a great day, have some fun 2-tapping, and I'll see you guys next time.